the audience,
Right, yeah.
my face, but I know she had her post was related to the electromagnetic exposure.
Well, we can have their experts address that.
Right.
What I read, it's welded in or acceptable standards.
Right.
Oh, yep. That's really outside our charge.
Absolutely.
Yeah. This
Yeah.
is for master plan
Did you go?
compliance. We ate early, so maybe we get the kids.
Might have, but Maryland had a vacation committee.
Oh, that's right. Yeah,
wrap
yeah,
up,
yeah. Yep.
meeting,
Right.
so she didn't finish that till
Post-event critique. or whatever.
Yeah. 5:30, 6, whatever it was,
And I
and
guess that's the only way.
I wasn't gonna try and
Yeah, I mean, there are
rush through this, but again,
Right,
some
yeah.
coats before
everything is
coming here.
Because you can't park anywhere near.
You can park in those meal kits that were ordered, but you can get there 3 nights a week. We use our roads.
Yeah,
I think
there's a
there's
lot of
on our porch.
I'm not taking.
Oh, gee.
Not no chance of that.
Yeah.
Right. So, glass of apples, a couple of pretzels, and
That's awesome.
Off I went.
so hold me till, after the
Well, we had leftovers, so,
Oh,
from
Yeah,
last
for
night.
instance, I think Ray's one too.
Maryland said there was a lot of.
Oh, is it?
They said the
Yeah, oh, yeah,
Sure,
yeah.
yeah.
What time's the game?
Yeah, that's true, yeah. Yep.
5 o'clock. So I'm planning, trying to get to Seacrest by 1:45 or something like that.
Yes, my feelings exactly. That's why I called. That's good though. Sure.
Yeah, it's all good.
So I think we're ready, Karen?
Kumbaya,
Is it exactly 6:30? Okay. Adequate notice of the time this meeting was given under the provisions of the Open Public Meetings Act and was posted and sent to the official designated newspaper in compliance with the law. Roll call, Mr. Calderon.
Here.
Mr. Rickings.
Here.
Chairman Bixby.
Here.
Mayor Vital.
Here.
Mr. Mikado.
Here.
And Ms. Mills are present. And all we have on tonight is Selco Partnership doing business as Verizon. Mr. Beck, you're up. Special meeting.
And before we get started, I'd just like to clarify, this is a courtesy review of a capital project undertaken by the borough. The purpose here is anytime there's a capital project, it has to be referred to the planning board for a courtesy review. And basically, you have to consider that and just to consider the proposal, and if you have any recommendations as to its conformity with the master plan, you can provide that to the governing body. The governing body can't proceed unless they get that report from the planning board, or if 45 days lapsed without any recommendations, then they can proceed. So it's not a traditional hearing, it's not an application for development. You don't need to take any votes. You can really, if there's a consensus with recommendations, you can direct my office to provide that to the governing body. And that's pretty much it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hamburger. For the record, my name is Michael Beck of the Beck Law Firm. The applicant before you this evening is Selco Partnership, doing business as Verizon Wireless. Of course, we are here with regard to 416 New Jersey Avenue. It is Block 33, Lot 7. So pursuant to a municipal bid, which was awarded to Verizon Wireless as the lead applicant in this case, Verizon Wireless proposes to relocate its existing telecommunications antennas from atop the municipal water tank, which is here and on the same property, and to construct a new 170-foot monopole with a lightning rod that extends to 175 feet above grade. Once that is constructed, Verizon Wireless will relocate its antennas from the existing water tank to the new monopole. Also, as the board is certainly aware, there are 2 additional carriers. And when I say carriers, I'm referring to telecommunications carriers. So there are 2 additional telecom carriers that are on the water tank presently, and that is T-Mobile and AT&T. It is expected that they will similarly move their antennas from the water tank to the proposed monopole, which is to be located adjacent to the water tank. The ground equipment, because for each one of these carriers, they require ground equipment, radio equipment, in order to function, will remain exactly where it is and as it is today, and as it's been approved on the site. There are existing, as our engineer will explain, existing cable bridges, which are referred to as ice bridges, between the existing ground equipment and the cables that run up the water tank presently. Those are gonna be removed. So everything is now going to be undergrounded. So the proposal will include putting all the existing telecommunications cables and electric underground from the monopole back to the existing shelters and equipment cabinets. The facility only requires electric and telephone to operate. The property itself, this particular lot, is about 1.2 acres, and as you know, it's owned by the borough. The proposal pursuant to municipal bid also includes the removal of the existing 100-foot lattice tower that's on the site. So the new monopole will be able to hold all municipal or EMS antennas as well. Any of those antennas that need to be relocated from the lattice tower, which is being taken down, can be located on the monopole. So that was also part of the municipal direction in the bid specifications, and that's part of our application this evening. So as you heard Mr. Amberger indicate, the applicant is here this evening to present our radio frequency emissions, and our engineering testimony as to the site. And we are seeking your review and recommendation. Certainly any recommendations that the board has, as Mr. Amberger indicated, will be relayed to the governing body. And that is the opening.
All right, great, thanks.
If there are no questions, I can go right to my first witness.
That'd be great, thanks.
Okay, Mr. Peterson?
Move that around to best suit the audience and the board.
Here, well, I'll still,
You still need to
I'll still swear you in. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Can you please state your full name for the record?
Sure, Andrew Peterson, Andrew common spelling. Peterson is Peterson.
And can you give us a little your background?
Sure. I've been involved in the design of these types of facilities from a radio frequency perspective now for almost 30 years, since 1997 when I was an intern at what is now Verizon Wireless. Back then was Bell Atlantic 9X Mobile. I'm a licensed professional engineer in New Jersey as well as 6 other states. I've testified hundreds of times, if not 1,000 times, before municipal bodies, although I don't believe ever here. I've also testified in federal court and state court as an expert witness in civil and criminal matters regarding cellular records and other such related matters. I have an undergraduate degree in electrical engineering from Lehigh University, as well as a graduate degree also in electrical engineering, also from Lehigh University. That's about it.
So I'm going to offer Mr. Peterson as a licensed professional engineer in the state of New Jersey, but his testimony will be focusing not on the civil engineering, but on the radio frequency design and emissions aspects of this application.
Okay.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Okay, Mr. Peterson, did you, at the request of the applicant, undertake an investigation into the radio frequency design of the existing and proposed site for Verizon Wireless.
Yes, I did.
And did you or members of your firm, under your direction, prepare the report that's before the board? It is dated June 5th of this year. It's by DBM Engineering, and it's entitled Radio Frequency Design Analysis for Verizon Wireless.
Yes.
That report has been filed with the application, but for purposes of referring to it, I'd like to mark it as A1.
It would be eighth grade,
Oh.
actually, okay? Eighth grade, we take the application and submission as they will be made to.
Very good. We'll mark that as Exhibit A3. So, Mr. Peterson, are you familiar with what's been marked as Exhibit A3?
Yes, I am.
And did you in fact prepare this report?
Yes, I did.
Okay. So can you please, as a preliminary matter, advise the board whether or not Verizon Wireless is licensed by the Federal Communications Commission?
They are, yes.
And do you know how many bands or frequencies Verizon Wireless holds at this point?
Quite a few. They're licensed in the 700 megahertz band, the 850 megahertz band, 1900 megahertz, 2100 megahertz, 3500, 3700, 28 gigahertz, 39 gigahertz. The specific blocks or channel blocks in those bands vary county to county. And I'm not sure off the top of my head exactly what blocks they're licensed for here, but they are licensed in all those bands.
Okay. And this is a little bit different than what this board may be used to seeing. You know, quite often when we come before any municipal body, I'm asking you to describe a gap in coverage and any tall structures that are around that gap, how we can use those tall structures to fill the gap, but that's not exactly what we're doing this evening. So this evening, we have an existing tall structure that's currently holding telecommunications antennas for both Verizon, AT&T, and T-Mobile. Is that your understanding?
That's correct, yes.
So we're gonna maybe do this a little bit differently. Can you please advise the board what areas of town are currently being served by the existing antennas on the water tank? And then please let us know about the proposal to relocate the antennas and how that may change or differ what the residents are used to receiving in terms of service.
Sure. I would direct your attention to the radio frequency design report, which is A3. There are a series of maps in that report, beginning on page 3, then page 4, and 5. And what I've attempted to do with those maps is walk through the progression of what's there today as far as Verizon Wireless reliable coverage, what we can anticipate with the water tank site being decommissioned, and then what we would have once the tower's constructed and the Verizon Wireless antennas affixed at the proposed center line of 167 feet. Those maps are also on the board, the large board to my left, which I can kind of flip through and talk
Yeah,
about, if
once
that's
you get-
easiest,
yeah.
yeah.
Yep, so, Mr. Peterson, as you flip through the boards and hopefully the public can see it as well, if you can, also, as you're pointing to the larger exhibit, let us know which page it's on in your report as well, the corresponding page.
Sure, so the first map is labeled Verizon Wireless Existing Reliable Coverage. That is on page 3 of the report. This is just an enlarged version. It's first and foremost a map. We can see the municipal boundaries in black. We see 35 here, basically almost bisecting the exhibit. We also have the other roadways shown. We've got other map features, water, bodies of water, typical map type features. And then we have some Verizon Wireless specific information. including the existing sites that Verizon Wireless currently has operating, including the location of the water tank just outside the door here. The information on those surrounding sites is also in the report as far as their structure type, their address, other pertinent information about those sites, and that's on page 2, I think, of the report, although I'd have to find it.
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah,
It's on page 2. So those, on page 2, you indicate that there are additional Verizon Wireless sites located at 212 to 228 Park Avenue. There is a Lattice Tower on Route 35. There's another site on 1123 Burnt Tavern Road, and there's a site at 501 Boardwalk. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And the exhibit that you're referring to, which again is page 3 of your report that's been marked as A3, there are certain colors and there's a key. Can you explain the key to the board and the colors and what they represent?
Sure. There are 3 thresholds of coverage shown here. The strongest being an in-building threshold, and that's illustrated in green. The next strongest, an in-car threshold in yellow, and an on-street threshold in red. The reason for the 3 thresholds here is it takes a stronger signal, a more stringent signal threshold to penetrate a more robustly built structure, like say the one we're in right now, steel and glass structure, than it would to penetrate a vehicle or to serve your device when you're out just, let's say, walking the dog. There's that attenuation of the building material that weakens the signal as it makes its way to your device that has to be accounted for. So we have that 3 threshold map here to illustrate that. And you can see with the current configuration, there is solid in-building coverage for the majority of the municipality. There are some areas in the northeast corner that have some spotty in-building coverage. So we can see that there is only this yellow in-car coverage and not the green, stronger in-building coverage there. And then a little bit on the western border as well. And then some spotty, smaller areas that we can pick out pixel by pixel here if we wanted to. But for the most part, there is strong in-building coverage, with the exception mainly of the northeast area here. So today, currently, we do have that. The water tank is affording that strong in-building coverage, as a lot of this area is coming from that. However, and I'll flip to the next page here, and this map is on page 4 of the report. If Verizon were to vacate the water tank, we would be left with what's being illustrated here is the Verizon Wireless reliable coverage without the White Sands facility, and that's nothing more than the Verizon Wireless internal name for the water tank site. So you can see that a lot of areas, particularly to the north of the site, and then some fingers headed southwest and southeast, there are a lot of areas there that are now going to lose that strong in-building coverage. So what that means is for folks whose homes are there, whose businesses are there, who rely on that service threshold to penetrate the structures that they find themselves in on a daily basis, they're no longer going to have that reliable coverage. There is a separate aspect of this that is also a capacity aspect that would negatively be impacted also by a decommissioning of this site.
And so what do you mean by capacity? Describe that to the board.
Sure, each one of these sites can only support a finite number of voice calls and data sessions. So if we were to remove this facility that's carrying a lot of data, especially this time of year when we have an influx of visitors, residents, day trippers, whatever, what have you, particularly on the busy short weekends, that capacity issue would also really, this would be a detrimental, extremely detrimental from that perspective. where there just wouldn't be enough radio resources to handle the demand that's being put on the network. So all the coverage concerns aside, we would have this capacity issue as well. And in order to have reliable service, we need both coverage and capacity to enable your wireless device to work. So it's tough to kind of illustrate that with propagation modeling, particularly in this kind of case where we have a site on air and it's being decommissioned. But it is worth noting here that that's also, I'd say, equally concerning with removing this site would be that capacity issue. So back to the coverage though, if we were to remove this facility without a suitable replacement, this would be the scenario where we would lose that in-building coverage. Important to note here that wireless substitution, which is the phenomenon of folks replacing their landline with a wireless connection, is now overall at 78% of adults and 87% of children living in wireless-only households. So when we have a situation like this where we're contemplating this, or at least the potential of removing the strong in-building coverage from a whole lot of households, this issue of wireless substitution rushes to the forefront of my thoughts anyway, where folks who are relying on their communications through a wireless provider would no longer have that provision in their home. And that can be impactful, not only from a convenience perspective, but a real safety perspective for folks in their homes who are relying on that communication. There's also the direct emergency services implications, where about 80% of 911 calls now are originating from wireless devices. So you have someone in their home who takes a fall, even if they have a landline, if they can't get to their landline phone to make that call, they need that reliable in-building coverage in order for that connection to go through. Removing this site without suitable replacement, that becomes a real issue from that perspective as well. So for a whole host of reasons, removing this site without a suitable replacement is not, it's really not an option, which brings us to the last of the slides, and that would be on page 6.
4.
I'm sorry. Page
Oh, strike
5.
that.
Page 5.
Page 5 of the report.
Page 5 of the report.
Which I'll flip to here. This is titled Verizon Wireless Proposed Reliable Coverage. So again, through propagation modeling, which I don't think I really explained, but it's a computer program that allows us to examine the wireless network in a multitude of scenarios, what's there now, what we would have with the decommissioning. We can examine what this new site would do. It's a standard software that is it's an industry standard software used by all the wireless providers, Verizon Wireless included, that allows us to model the network with very high accuracy as far as what-if scenarios and looking at the network through a number of different lenses. In this case, what we're modeling is the new proposed monopole tower with the antenna center line at 167 feet for Verizon Wireless, which is what is proposed on the 170-foot tower. And you can see we're now filling back in those areas that we had lost that strong in-building coverage. So this facility will replace what's there today. Not only that, it's going to improve coverage by virtue of the greater height here that's being proposed. We'll have improved in-building coverage in the northeast portion. I think that's the Lake Louise, if I'm reading that correctly, area to the northeast. So the in-building residences, businesses there are going to have an improved in-building service, again, by virtue of that greater height on the new tower. So the facility will replace what's being lost and actually improve things from an in-building perspective.
Is the antenna height that's proposed here, the 167-foot center line for Verizon Wireless, the minimum height that's needed to show the proposed coverage that you have as figure 3, page 5 of your report?
It is, yes.
And you indicated that, in fact, due to the increased height over the existing antennas, that the borough should receive more in building coverage, particularly in the northeast, all the way, it looks like, to Manasquan Inlet. Is that correct?
Correct.
In the telecommunications industry, what type of separation distance is required between the antenna arrays between each of the carriers?
The industry standard is 10 feet, and that's for just the physical separation that's required. With the larger of the antennas that providers are deploying at 8 feet, so we've got 4 feet from center line to tip, 8 feet from tip to tip. So if providers that are 10 feet apart are installing 8-foot antennas, there's 4 feet of separation between the tips of the antennas, two given from each side. So from that physical perspective, that gives enough room to install them. Also from an interference mitigation perspective, this is the tried and true industry standard where we don't have to worry about interference between providers, even though they're installed so closely to one another. This is the typical setup that has been used now for a couple decades at least.
And Mr. Peterson, I asked that question because quite often carriers are asked, can we squish the distance between the antennas? Can we mount them all together? How can we reduce the height of the proposal? Based on what's shown here in the construction drawings and based on your report, is the separation distance appropriate in your professional opinion between each of the 3 carriers?
It is, and it's typically what is required by the carriers. They want that 10-foot center line to center line separation.
So a question, so when you did your propagation studies, did you look at other heights to see how that would change? Or, I mean, if you could lower the whole thing but keep the separation but still get an improved coverage?
Well, what's really driving, at least in part driving the overall structure height, is the existence of a water tank. We do have this large object now that we are moving off of and onto an adjacent site. We can't have a situation where that water tank would obstruct the line of sight from the antennas of the lowest set of antennas to the surrounding area.
So, Mr. Peterson, just to go on that line of thought, can you explain to the board and the public how the telecommunications antennas work, how they connect to your actual device? And you referred to line of sight technology. Can you explain that?
Sure. So it is a largely line of sight technology. The energy that's transmitted in the bands that Verizon Wireless and the other providers are licensed in, it will penetrate, as I mentioned, even robustly built structures to a certain extent. There's a great deal of loss when we talk about a building like this, glass and steel building. It will penetrate a vehicle to a greater extent. There's less glass, less steel, etc. But that line of sight is of utmost importance. Once we start stacking obstruction after obstruction, that degradation that each obstruction causes cannot be overcome by the link, the radio frequency link. So the thought of a water tank, this very large metallic object, very close to the antennas, blocking that signal at its source basically, is kind of, I mean, if you want to think about it as a flashlight, it is light energy. It's different frequency than visible light, but if we have a flashlight, a mag light, if you're familiar with those, where we can twist the end of the mag light to focus and widen and sharpen the beam, that's what these antennas are really doing with that radio frequency energy. They're focusing it, we're pointing it. So if we were to say put our finger in front of that mag light right at its source, we would have this, this very dark spot in the middle of the beam of light that we're trying to propagate to the subscribers. That's what this water tank would do to our radio frequency energy if we don't account for it. So the way things are arranged here, the water tank is basically due north poles being proposed. There is a large loss of coverage to the north of the site once we pull it away, making it even more important that we get our signal out without that water tank becoming an obstruction. So we call that a shadowing effect. We want to avoid it, which is really why we need to have, in part, why we'd like to have that overall tower height 170 feet. The top carrier Verizon at 167 and the others at 157 and 147. We can clear the tank, it's no longer an obstruction, and we have the added benefit of the height, which gives us better coverage and building up to the northeast portion of the municipality.
Would this site at all in any way interfere with existing or proposed police, fire, or EMS communications?
No.
Why not?
As I mentioned, Verizon Wireless and the other providers, they're licensed by the FCC. That licensure dictates the very specific portions of the radio frequency spectrum in which they can operate. Other users of the radio frequency spectrum, whether it's AM, FM broadcast, television broadcast, baby monitors, emergency services, they're also using portions of that radio frequency spectrum that are licensed to them by the FCC. So by virtue of this licensure that separates the channels, there's no overlap that could cause any potential interference. So no concern from that perspective.
In the municipality, are there any other tall structures besides the water tank or the existing water tank in which we have to remove the antennas? Is there anything else that's tall enough to provide the coverage that you're showing here?
No,
No, nothing in the municipality that exists today.
correct.
So at this point, I'm going to pause a little bit for direction from the board. I am finished with direct on Mr. Peterson with regard to the radio frequency design. Well, I have one more question, so as I'm thinking about it. Largely done with respect to radio frequency design. I'm also going to ask Mr. Peterson to testify to his other report that was submitted, which is regard to radio frequency emissions. So after I finish my last question to Mr. Peterson, I would open him to, or look for your direction as to whether or not you want to take questions on just the radio frequency design portion, or if you want to continue with his testimony into the emissions.
Well, I think we could, if there's any questions from the board on just this portion, we could entertain those and then move on to the EMF side.
Perfect. I've got one more question for Mr. Peterson on the radio frequency design. In this particular instance, Verizon Wireless, pursuant to a municipal bid, became, I believe, what they call the lead applicant in this case. But as we've talked about already, and on that basis, you're showing the Verizon Wireless coverage, the potential loss of coverage, the potential increased coverage should this site be constructed as proposed. You did not do a similar analysis or were retained to do a similar analysis for AT&T or T-Mobile, is that correct?
That's correct, I was not.
However, based upon your experience in this field for more than 30 years, do you believe that those carriers would have a similar propagation with their antennas? In other words, a similar loss with the loss of the water tank site and a similar substitution with the addition of the monopole?
I believe it would be similar.
Okay. So I have no further questions for Mr. Peterson on the radio frequency design.
Anybody from the board have any? All right. We can move on to
One
the-
question, just a curiosity, the equipment that's on the water tower, is it all active, is it all in use, or, I don't know if you know that or not, but
The Verizon equipment is very much in use.
Okay.
Yeah, I can't speak to
the other,
yeah, I would assume the other providers' equipment is also in use, the AT&T,
think, yeah.
T-Mobile equipment. Can't say for sure though, but I would be shocked if it wasn't.
So you're gonna use the existing equipment, swing it over to the new monopole, or you're gonna replace some of the equipment with new?
They'll want to put new antennas, new radio heads, they'll kind of want to build that site first.
Okay.
That way there's no
Gap.
loss, and then they'll cut it over. That way there's no, interruption in service, or minimal interruption in service. They'll probably do the cut over, in a single night, I would think, but obviously have some steps before that.
And no additional like 5G nodes or anything like that, it's just whatever's on the existing water tower will be transferred over?
So the water tower already has 5G
Okay,
equipment on it.
right, but you're not putting more
No.
on the monopole?
No, it would be a very similar setup from a radio frequency perspective. Some of the antenna models may change a little bit. In fact, they probably will, just a little bit more modern, but it will be very, very similar as
Okay.
far as the antenna counts, style antennas, radio heads, et cetera.
How is this related to those other towers that were going up that are no longer going up? From last year, 2 years ago?
I think it's unrelated.
They're unrelated, like what this tower accomplishes is not related to that.
Right. Completely separate.
Mr. Peterson, just to clarify maybe the question, did your report as A3 or your propagation plots take into consideration any other proposed but not built sites?
No.
No. So it's basically what is on air today with the potential loss and then the potential gain based on the monopole.
Correct.
Does that answer? Okay.
All right, I think we move on to phase 2.
Very good. I'm going to mark as. I would like to mark as Exhibit A4, the previously filed DBM Engineering PC report. It is entitled Electromagnetic Exposure Analysis. Mr. Peterson, are you familiar with what I've pre-marked as Exhibit A4?
I am.
And did you in fact prepare this report?
I did.
Okay. So you mentioned earlier in your testimony that Verizon Wireless is licensed by the FCC. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And are you generally familiar with the FCC's regulations with regard to emissions from wireless antennas such as are proposed here and exist here?
I am, yes.
And I will also indicate for purpose of completeness to the board that the Federal Telecommunications Act of 1996, and you may certainly be familiar with this, has a preemption for local governments, which indicates that they may not regulate the placement, construction, or modification of a wireless facility on the basis of environmental effects of radio frequency emissions to the extent that such facilities comply with the FCC's regulations. So what we intend to do with Mr. Peterson's testimony is confirm that the site as it exists, but also as it's proposed, will continue to comply with the FCC's regulations. So in that regard, Mr. Peterson, can you please describe your report, the electromagnetic exposure analysis, tell the board how you looked at the existing site and the proposed site, and what your findings are?
Sure. The FCC prescribes the formulas by which individuals like myself are to use to evaluate the anticipated electromagnetic emissions environment from a facility like this. Those formulas are they are basic physics formulas that govern propagation of radio frequency energy. We apply those formulas to the specifics of what is being proposed, and in this case, what is existing as far as the antenna models, the radio power, the loss of the cables, the loss of connectors, anything in the RF chain that affects the power output, and then the pattern of the antennas. And then we also apply some upper limit assumptions, including ground reflection. So not only do we consider the energy that's directly incident on, let's say, a passerby at ground level, but also an equally powerful reflected wave of energy that is reflecting from the ground, which exaggerates the exposure. That single assumption doubles the power, which quadruples power density. So that single assumption can quadruple the output that the formulas yield. in terms of power density. So there are also other upper limit assumptions, including 24/7, 365 maximum power. It's very rare that these sites would transmit with maximum power. There's always a little power held back for setting up calls and some of the handshaking that goes on even when maximum demand is made of the site. There's a little bit of power held back. We also include maximum traffic loading, antenna down tilt, and I also, when we do these formulas, or when we apply these formulas, we don't take any attenuating factors into account. So any trees, buildings, naturally and man-made occurring structures that would attenuate the signal are ignored. So what we have is a calculated worst case or upper limit for exposure by virtue of how the formula is applied. So all that being said, we have, in the case of the proposed facility, exposure levels from all three carriers that are contemplated here, which would be 0.17% of the applicable FCC standard, so roughly 600 times below the FCC standard at any ground level area of public access, including the base of the tower and any distance away. So significantly below the standard that's acceptable for human exposure to electromagnetic energy, and certainly compliant in this case by a wide margin.
And I had asked you in a recent phone call that we had, if you could please calculate using this exact same formula that you just indicated, yielded 600 times below the FCC standard for the proposed monopole and all the antennas. I asked you, can you calculate that same standard, FCC standard, for the existing antennas operating on the water tank? Were you able to do that?
Yes.
And what was your finding in that review?
In that case, the levels would be, or are, 0.26% of the FCC's allowable limits. So they're still compliant in this case by about 400 times, so compliant by a wide margin, but not as wide as they would be or will be with the proposed tower. And that's simply because the antennas are being proposed at a higher elevation on the new tower. They're further away from the ground, and the ground is where we're evaluating the exposure as per the FCC guidance. So it stands to reason that the exposure level will decrease. Still remain compliant by a wide margin, but it will decrease with what's being proposed.
Okay, so just to summarize, is your testimony this evening that the existing site is fully compliant with the FCC standards, and the proposed site at the new heights is also fully compliant with the FCC standards?
Yes.
And I ask you this, and I don't mean to put you on the spot, but are there any real-world examples of radio frequency emission that might be similar to this 400 or 600 times below the FCC standard, something that the public can easily understand?
I mean, most sources in our homes of radio frequency emissions would be more powerful than the exposure levels that we're talking about here. So when we talk about the Wi-Fi router in your home or your cellular device itself, just through sheer proximity, those devices, if you're close to them, will, again, fully compliant. They're required to be tested and maintained in full compliance. But the exposure levels from those types of devices is greater than most situations with a tower type facility nearby. You know, unless you are climbing the tower or somehow getting yourself closer to those antennas, you know, within 10 feet or so, 15 feet from the front of those antennas, really can't get into a situation where exposure becomes an issue.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Peterson.
Sure.
I have no more questions for Mr. Peterson at this time.
So, these are calculated values that you're looking at. I mean, has there been any, like, post-installation testing to confirm that, these kind of values or what you see?
On the existing water tank?
Or any?
Oh,
I mean,
sure.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, that is occasionally a requirement that a municipality would impose on a site. Occasionally, I've seen that, and usually what happens is when you go out and test, in my experience, and I've done those very tests myself, it takes some specialized equipment, basically a broadband scanner that looks at a wide range of frequencies. But what happens with those tests is the results are typically 10 times below, on the order of about 10 times below what the calculated worst case exposure levels yield. And that's simply because of all the upper limit assumptions that are included in the calculation here. Whereas in the real world, there are attenuating factors. The site is not at maximum power 24/7, 365. You're not always in the direct main focus of the antenna, whereas the report contemplates all those and contemplates them all at once. So it's usually about 10x below. That's to answer your question more succinctly.
Any other questions?
So being 600x below what is applicable sounds great, unless everybody else is at 800 times below. I mean, have you looked, are you aware of other areas that are similar, or other projects similar size, scale? You know, are you aware of the results there? Do they compare favorably with ours? Is that something that you can speak to?
I mean, whenever you have a monopole type situation with, the providers at the top of a 150 or even a 100 foot, or it doesn't even have to be that tall, you're going to have results of a report like this that are going to be some tenths of a percent of the complying limit. Just because the antennas are at an elevated position, and the antenna pattern from these antennas is kind of, to go back to my Maglite flashlight example, where the focus is, the energy is focused, and it's focused mainly toward the horizon with a little bit of down tilt. There's enough energy just by virtue of being close to subscribers that would be near the base of the tower. There's enough energy to serve them. It's really the focus of the pattern is out towards the horizon, to get out to quarter mile, half a mile away type of out to some distance, where now you have that distance to overcome as far as the radio link goes. So because of that, you have the two kind of competing aspects of this. You have, as you go away, you have greater distance. So as you go away from the base of the tower, I should say. So that distance takes over and decreases the exposure levels. When you're at the foot of the tower, you have the pattern that puts very little energy directly towards you. So that keeps the levels very low. So at ground level, in a tower type situation, these are typical values, tenths of a percent. I hope that answered the question.
Yeah, I mean, 0.17 is great in this scenario, but I don't know how it compares to anywhere else, right? Are there other areas of the state, of the country, of the region that you would see markedly higher or lower value?
No, it's similar. I mean, it's very much site specific, depending on the height of the site, how many carriers are there, the antenna models being used. That number can move around, but that's consistent with
This is the
this
range
type
that
of
they-
design. Yeah, yeah.
All right. I think we're all, no questions from us. Do you have any questions? Or?
I don't have any questions.
I have nothing, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Peterson.
Welcome.
We'll go to our next expert. Thank you. Ms. Menard. stand up and be sworn, please?
Can you please raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Can you please state your full name and spell your last for the record?
Yes, Jacob Minardi, and that's spelled M-I-N-A-R-D-I.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Mr. Minardi, can you please give the board the benefit of your education, professional experience, and any licenses you may hold?
Yes, certainly. I have been with my firm Network Connects since 2013, dealing exclusively with telecommunications installations and projects. I have a state licensed professional engineer, license in New Jersey, Delaware, Pennsylvania, and Maryland. And I'm a Rutgers University graduate with a Bachelor's of Science in Civil Engineering.
I'm going to offer Mr. Minardi as a licensed professional engineer.
Okay, so
Thank you. Mr. Minardi, did you or members of your firm, under your direction, prepare the plans which are before the board this evening?
Yes.
Can you describe the location and the existing conditions of the site, please?
Certainly. The existing site is, well, it shares the exact site as the existing water tower with the telecommunications equipment. The proposed telecommunications tower is located just south of the existing water tower, in line with the tower bowl, just on the other side of the fence line between the existing water tower and the existing municipal building.
And can you please describe to the board, although I'm sure most residents on the board are familiar with the existing telecommunications equipment that's on site presently?
Yes, certainly. So the existing telecommunications equipment on the water tower is to be removed and relocated onto the proposed monopole to help facilitate the tank painting and repair and maintenance. And I believe there was also, I have not reviewed the report myself, but I believe that there was a maintenance and condition report for the water tower that recommended removal of the telecommunications equipment from the water tower. As for the at-grade equipment, that is to remain in place. The existing ice bridges that help protect the coax running from the ground equipment to the water tower are to be removed and replaced with a proposed trench running from the existing ground equipment to the proposed monopole location.
Okay, and just for the record, can you please describe the proposed improvements, including the monopole, the height of the monopole, the number of carriers that are proposed?
Certainly. So the proposed monopole is 170 feet tall, measured from ground level, with a 5-foot lightning rod attached to the top. The proposed monopole is intended to support the 3 carriers that are currently on the water tower at elevations of 167 feet, 157 feet, and 147 feet above ground level.
And you indicated that the proposed monopole is designed to support those carriers. Will a structural support be submitted with the applicant's building permit application?
Yes, it will.
And has the foundation in this particular case been considered and designed?
Yes, the proposed foundation has been considered for the intended loading of the tower and has been designed. And there is also a geotechnical report that was prepared in advance of the foundation design to help facilitate the foundation design.
So I always bring this up because I'm an Ocean County resident and I know exactly where we are and I've been here my whole life. When we're building or proposing to build, whether it's the water tank itself or a monopole just like this in this area, something that's always concerning is the high wind speeds that we potentially have here. Are you familiar with the building codes that would apply, and can you please describe how they are site-specific or county-specific or municipality-specific?
Yes, certainly. So the proposed monopole and foundation will be analyzed and designed in accordance with the applicable New Jersey building codes. That would be 2021 International Building Code. For telecommunications facilities, that would use TIA-222-H code for telecommunication structures in accordance with ASCE 716. These are all building codes that, I should say, these are all codes and standards that fall under the New Jersey building codes.
Okay, so it's a lot of numbers and citations,
Yes.
which I certainly appreciate you rattling off from memory. But maybe more in a basic terminology, will this monopole be designed to withstand potential hurricane force winds that we can experience here?
Certainly. So those aforementioned codes state the design criteria, and that design criteria is specific to locations. So for this particular location, you're looking at some of the highest wind speeds to consider because we are on the coast and we are in a hurricane-prone region. In addition to the high wind speeds, you also have, proximity to the Atlantic Ocean, which in itself, brings into account additional factors of safety to help determine the forces that are acting on the tower. So for this particular location, those aforementioned codes require this tower to be analyzed under 121 mile-an-hour wind speeds with exposure category D. And exposure category D is the most stringent of exposure categories. And the way exposure categories work is, again, location-based, with this location being 4 or 5 blocks from the Atlantic Ocean. Exposure category D is recommended because, again, hurricane-prone region, so close to the Atlantic Ocean. So this tower is being analyzed under some of the most stringent requirements under the building code.
Okay.
If I can just interrupt.
Please.
The ground equipment, is that also, I mean, it's in a flood zone, right? I mean, so that's accounted for the design as well?
So this particular design doesn't, it's not taking into consideration the existing ground equipment, it's taking into consideration the proposed tower.
Okay.
And in fact, is the ground equipment that exists today proposed to be altered in any way other than the cabling?
Not with this drawing set, no, it is not.
So all the existing equipment and its location is not proposed to change here?
That's correct.
You also indicated that there's a lightning rod proposed atop the monopole, is that right?
Yes.
And certainly we're all familiar with the type of summer lightning storms that we have here. Can you describe how the lightning suppression system works and how it's proposed here?
Yes. There will be a standard lightning suppression system installed for this monopole, and some of the facets of that will be the 5-foot lightning rod at the top of the tower, as well as master ground bars at the base of the tower, and ground wire running from the top of the tower to the base of the tower where the master ground bar is. In addition to the monopole itself, each carrier would have a grounding system installed at their equipment heights. And again, there would be ground wire running from each of those carrier elevations down to the master ground bar at the base of the tower. And from there, there will be a ground ring installed at the tower that will then dissipate the lightning into the ground.
You mentioned that the equipment cabinets are not going to change in their location, but just generally speaking, are the equipment cabinets remotely monitored?
Yes, they are. So they're remotely monitored just to check on the performance of the equipment within the tower, or excuse me, with the equipment within the cabinets to ensure that they are operating properly.
And are those monitored on a 24/7 basis?
Yes, they are.
Is any new lighting proposed here?
There is no lighting proposed unless it's required by the FAA.
That's what I was gonna ask, there's no, the height of the tower doesn't warrant safety lighting?
I believe we submitted the application to the FAA for a determination. I'm unaware if we've received that determination back or not.
To the best of our knowledge, no additional lighting is proposed, and that has been in fact submitted to the FAA, and it's pending their review, but the initial analysis from all the carriers is no additional lighting should be required. Is any additional signage proposed?
No additional signage or advertisement on the proposed tower.
How often is the site visited by technicians?
So each carrier will have their own set of technicians that visit the facility just to check on their ground equipment in addition to the 24/7 cabinet monitoring that will be in place, or that is currently in place. Typically, they visit every 2 to 4 weeks or so just to get some eyes on their equipment, change out any parts that are needed. They don't require heavy equipment. They'll show up to the site using a standard work truck or van or SUV with their toolbox to, do whatever they need to do to maintain the equipment within the equipment cabinets.
And that would be consistent with what's going on right now, is that correct? Because we have an operating site with 3 carriers.
Yes, that's correct.
And based on the new monopole, you wouldn't expect any change in those operations from how they exist today?
There would be no change in the performance, correct?
Are there any additional drainage facilities that are required or proposed here?
No additional drainage facilities proposed, no.
How do the technicians access the proposed facility?
They will utilize the existing gate to the lot, which I believe they're currently utilizing. Believe there's a gate with an access code that they'll be able to drive their vehicle into.
And that's in coordination with the municipality?
Yes, access will be coordinated with the municipality in advance of the site visit by the technician.
And that's consistent with how it works today, right, to get to the water tank?
Right, that's correct. No changes proposed with that current system in place.
Another part of the proposal is to remove an existing lattice tower. Is that your understanding?
Yes, that's my understanding.
And that was part of the municipality's request in their bid specifications?
Yes.
And do you expect there to be any engineering or operational impediments based upon the applicant proposing to remove the lattice tower and also construct a new monopole?
I do not see any conflict with the removal of the lattice tower in addition to or incongruent with the monopole construction.
Okay. In your professional experience, are there any engineering concerns as to the safety of the monopole, the antennas, or even the existing equipment?
No, this will be, again, apologies for going back into the code jargon, but the proposed monopole steel, the anchor bolts, and the reinforced concrete foundation will all be designed in accordance with New Jersey building codes. And again, just due to the location, it's going to be under some of the most extreme winds and most stringent design criteria. So I do not have any concerns with the performance of the intended monopole.
The planning board engineer, Mr. Savicul, issued a letter dated June 25th of this year. Did you have an opportunity to read this letter?
Yes, I have.
So Mr. Savicul at page 3 indicated that the quote, municipal water tower is scheduled to be painted. As a part of that work, the telecommunications antenna and associated infrastructure must be removed from the water tower in order to complete the blasting and painting of the tank. A structural report issued July 2023 indicates that the water tower with associated antenna at current elevations would not meet current AWWA D100-21 structural design criteria for a water tower, end quote. I bring this up to you because you indicated earlier in your testimony that you had an indication that there was a failing structural for the water tank, but you had not personally reviewed that, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Is that what you were referring
That
to?
is correct,
Okay, I
yes.
just
That
wanted
is
to
the one I
clarify
was
that
referring to
You were in
earlier.
fact referring to what Mr. Savikul had indicated in his letter. Okay. While I'm staring at his letter, can you confirm that the monopole will be capable of supporting additional municipal emergency equipment?
Yes, I believe there's equipment currently installed on the tower, the lattice tower to be removed. So that equipment can be removed from the existing lattice tower and relocated onto the proposed monopole. Anytime there's new equipment added to the monopole or equipment upgraded, say they're upgrading a type of antenna equipment from, say 4G to 5G, something along those lines. Every time one of those equipment upgrades occur, new structural analysis is required of the tower and foundation. So if municipal equipment is to be removed and relocated onto the proposed monopole, a structural analysis report will be generated to confirm the monopole and foundation can safely support the additional equipment.
Okay. So quite often with any proposed telecommunications facility, in particular a new monopole, one of the impacts that's most readily apparent is visual impact. Have you had an opportunity to review the visual impact from the proposed site, and have you prepared any photo simulations?
Yes, my company has prepared some photo simulations showing the existing site and comparison to the site with the monopole improvements.
And when you create photo simulations in this particular case, did you ensure that the photo simulations match what is proposed as much as the height of the proposed monopole as well as the number of carriers and their antenna placements?
Yes,
Can you please show those photo simulations to the board and the public?
certainly. One moment, please. I have them up there.
And I didn't refer to your plans, but if there's anything you want to refer to in your plans, you're certainly welcome to do so.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Are these different from the photo sims that you had sent us?
Well, some of them may be, because,
Okay.
we did file photo simulations in advance, and I believe we have some additional updated views as well. Is that correct, Mr. Minardi?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so why don't you refer to them and we can mark them as needed?
Alright, so this is the cover sheet of the photo simulations intended to show the proposed tower location as well as the location of the photo simulations. Now, before we get into the photo simulations, you'll see the photo sim locations typical of 3. As we just mentioned, we created a few additional photo simulations in advance of today's meeting. So those locations aren't currently marked on the title sheet, but we can go over them once we get to those sheets.
Okay, so just for purposes of clarity of the record, the photo simulations and the cover sheet that you're gonna go through first, are those the ones that we previously submitted, and then you're gonna add additional
sir.
photo sims? Okay, so perhaps we can mark for at least identification as Exhibit A5, the package of photo simulations that was submitted with our application. And I'm gonna show you what's been marked as Exhibit A5. It's titled Cellco Partnership Doing Business as Verizon Wireless, Tri White Sands. And there's a revision date at the bottom of June 16, 2026. Are you familiar with these?
Yes, I am.
And were these prepared under your direction?
Yes.
And there's a cover sheet plus 1, 2, 3 pages of photo simulations, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so as we refer to these, I may, for records purpose, tell you what page you're referring to.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, okay, please proceed.
Certainly. So the first photo simulation is taken north of the property. This is at Cincinnati Ave and Foreman Avenue. So this is actually on Foreman Ave, looking south towards the water tower location. You can see on the left side is the current features on site, and the image on the right is the existing location with the addition of the 170-foot monopole with the 3 carrier elevation heights shown as well.
And for the record, this is page 2 of the packet that you previously submitted. And it looks like the view is looking 35 south, so from the north, this is what you would see from the sidewalk or the adjacent properties, is that correct?
That's correct. You'd see a similar image on the right there. And we have this labeled as Cincinnati Ave and Foreman Avenue.
Can you please go to your next photo simulation?
Certainly. So this next photo simulation is from the south of the site, looking north. Now this is Richmond Avenue and North Minetta Drive. You'll see again on the left is the existing conditions, and on the right is with the new monopole installed with these 3 carriers.
And you're also showing the removal of all of the existing antennas on the municipal water tank, is that
Yes,
correct?
that's correct. All right, on to the third sheet. So this is from the east of the lot, looking west. This one is at Washington Avenue and Baltimore Avenue. And again, same setup. On the left are the existing conditions, and on the right are the proposed conditions with the monopole added.
Okay. And those would be the 3 photo simulations that you submitted with what we've marked as A5, and those locations were shown on the cover sheet of that document, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Anything new that you have, I need to mark individually. Okay.
So I apologize. This one was issued just earlier today, so there is some touch-ups required, but I think it's enough to give you an idea of what the monopole would look like on the
So-
site.
Let's mark this sheet as Exhibit A6. It is noted as Cincinnati Avenue and Newark Avenue, and there's 3 views: existing conditions of the tank, proposed conditions, monopole, and proposed conditions, monopine. Can you please explain all of that?
Yes, certainly. So this is taken from south of the site, looking north. Again, on the left, we have the existing conditions showing the tank with the equipment installed on the tank. Now, the middle image is the proposed monopole added to the site. You'll see it's a little bit in line with the existing water tower. And our team added a 3rd image here, proposed conditions with a monopine instead of a monopole. And monopines are intended to stealth the appearance or hide the appearance of a monopole with a sort of a piece of infrastructure that mimics a pine tree.
Okay. And my understanding is that the borough at one point was considering requiring a monopine. or at least was considering it rather than a regular monopole as proposed. My understanding is that the municipality has selected the monopole as more appropriate here in this particular case. Do you, in your experience in the telecommunications field, often see monopines used in the type of geography that Point Pleasant Beach is?
Not typically.
And in this particular location, where, you know, do you have any opinion as to whether or not the monopole versus monopine has a better or greater, lesser visual impact?
Yes, I've seen monopines more successful in, say, a park area that's heavily wooded. But when you're dealing with a location that's developed, even if you have a decent amount of trees spread out through the neighborhood, the monopines tend to stick out, only because, you know, most trees around here, they're typically under 100 feet in height, whereas this monopine is going to be 170 foot tall. So there are some instances where, myself personally, I feel like when you go with a monopine in this sort of environment, it almost draws more attention to it than it would if it was a standard monopole with the galvanized steel finish.
Okay, do you have any?
Confirming what Mr. Beck said, that the original specifications did indicate that the borough governing body would have the ability to select either a monopole or a monopine, as the term is, but the governing body has considered that and is more or less in agreement that the monopine in this case was more obtrusive and drew
Stick
more
out like a sore
attention.
thumb.
I think there's a typical example of that in Bayhead.
There is. There is. Mr. Menardi, have you prepared any additional simulations?
We have one more simulation, again, taken south of the property from Cincinnati Avenue. This one's just taken a little bit closer to the property.
If I could, let me mark this as Exhibit A7. This is a photo simulation showing 3 different views. One is marked as existing conditions tank, the middle is marked as proposed conditions monopole, and the third is marked as proposed conditions monopine. It's indicated that this photo is at Cincinnati Avenue and Philadelphia Avenue. Is that accurate?
Yes, that's accurate.
Can you please, again, just briefly describe the photo simulation?
Certainly. Same setup, photo on the left are the existing conditions showing the water tank with the antenna installed on the water tank. The center photo is the proposed monopole installation with the antennas removed from the tank and relocated onto the monopole. And the third image on the right side is the proposed monopine setup that we just discussed as to whether it was suitable for this location or not.
And is that the extent of your photo simulation?
That is the extent of the photos.
I have no further questions for Mr. Menardi.
Question, so these photo simulations, in your experience, how closely do they resemble or actual installed conditions?
They're fairly accurate. You know, monopoles are fairly straightforward, and they're almost resemble a pole. They're technically 18-sided, galvanized steel, so it looks bland enough to where it sort of blends into the background, and it's fairly easy to. A Photoshop program was used to produce these, so it's fairly easy to Photoshop. And as for the antennas, you know, they kind of have you know, the faces of the antennas sort of have like a white finish, so typically rectangular shapes. So again, they're also somewhat straightforward to Photoshop.
Besides the monopine, are you aware of any other design concepts used to mask monopole?
Monopoles themselves are somewhat, I should say, for a monopole this size intended to support this amount of equipment, it's fairly difficult to mask. The one you typically see is the monopine, but some others that I've seen in the area, if it was a very small installation that had maybe, say, like a single carrier with a single antenna in each sector, I've seen some stealth flagpoles, which it's, you know, kind of like a small scale monopole, much smaller than what's being proposed here. But then around that is sort of an RF transparent shell, which masks the, you know, limited number of antennas and also could support a flag. So it blends into the background a little bit there. I've seen other stealthing options out there, but not for this part of the country. Like they've got cacti stealthing monopoles and that
That'd
kind
be
of thing, or palm trees. But over here, it's more so monopines and flagpoles.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
I have a general question. I don't know if it's for Mr. Minardi, but I'll throw it out there. How long is this process, start to finish?
And that is certainly a question that has been posed to Verizon Wireless as the lead for this municipal bid. So I'm gonna see if Mr. Minardi knows the answer, because attorneys aren't supposed to testify, but I'm certainly willing to tell you what I know as counsel to Verizon Wireless. Are you aware, Mr. Minardi, of the proposed construction schedule for this particular site?
Unfortunately, I apologize, I don't have that information available.
Okay. I will represent on behalf of Verizon Wireless that my understanding is that the construction schedule on this could begin as early as late October of this year and continue into the new year. The proposed staging would include Verizon Wireless as the lead here, preparing the site, preparing the foundation, actual construction of the pole, and then transfer of the Verizon antennas and their equipment first, because I think each carrier will handle their own equipment separately. My understanding is that transfer could occur in the beginning of the new year.
All right.
So, if you're done with the application, the bid specifications from the governing body did require public notice to property owners within 200 feet. So if you, before deliberations or discussion, if you want to permit a period of public comment, you could do so. It's an informal hearing. It's not,
Well, I thought maybe we could hear from Ray on his letter, and then we could open up to the public.
that's fine, yep.
Yep.
Just wanted to,
I think Mr. Beck did touch on several of the items, and Ryan touched on the purpose of the courtesy review, and then I just kind of went through a little bit of how we got here, the Borough Water Tower. The Borough Water Tower and the two associated tanks that function on the water treatment plant site were scheduled for painting. The two smaller tanks, the ground tanks, have been painted at this point. The tank, the water tower itself would have to have the antennas removed in order to paint the tank. Generally speaking, when you do that, you get what's called a cow. They sell on wheels, which is a temporary installation that they would relocate to while the tank was being painted. There's also been discussion over the last several years about the perhaps not very aesthetically appealing, having all the antennas all over the tank. I know there's discussion about putting a new logo for Point Pleasant Beach on there. So with regard to that, we knew that they were gonna come off, or my predecessor knew that they were gonna come off, as well as what Mr. Beck alluded to with regard to a structural analysis that was done on the tank. The tank at the time it was built was subject to a different set of regulations, or not different, but an older standard Those standards have since been upgraded, and when you take into account the wind load and the location of the antenna on the tank, there is an indication that the tank as it's currently constructed would not meet the structural requirements with all the added wind loading on it. With regard to that, the borough then sought to have additional locations or a alternate location, which is how we arrived at the lease agreement. As was previously testified, to just take them off the tower would be detrimental to coverage for Verizon Wireless and the other carriers, which is certainly not considered by any means. It's more something that's a necessity rather than just something that's a want nowadays. Mandated tree-like structure, the Borough Council has considered that. It's capable of supporting municipal communications equipment. As part of the specifications, we did require the applicant to appear to explain the need, explain the EMF requirements, and then I also just noted that with regard to capital expenditures, the 2020 master plan re-examination does list as objectives to maintain and improve emergency warning systems. As some of us know, we get, sometimes you get alerts through your cell phone provided as a PSA from the carriers. So certainly this tower would fit into providing those services. And then therefore I would consider that consistent with the master plan for, with regard to emergency service notification. And that's really all I had in my letter, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you. Any other comments?
I don't have any.
All right, I guess at this point, we would open up for just any comments on the app to the board from the public. So if you just come forward or raise your hand, come forward and state your name and your address, and we'll hear your comments. Please.
Mary Ann Ellsworth, I live at 414. Sure. Mary Ann Ellsworth, Maryann. Ellsworth is ELLSWORTH.
And just to confirm, there's no requirement that the
Maybe
members of the public be sworn in, so you can proceed.
I live at 414 Philadelphia
Okay.
Avenue. I just want to come over and show the picture here. They said that the water tower is 125 foot high. They said that these were going to be at 167, 157, and 147. So there really shouldn't, even 137, if you put the municipal equipment there, it's not going to come as low as the water tower. The reason we weren't going to get this was because it was going to block our water tower. Now, if you end here and you put a tree light in there, it's not going to block any of the water tower from Pleasant Beach. This is slightly off. I have another question, and that is, I believe I heard that all of the wiring inside the existing water tower that says Point Pleasant Beach was going to come out. Is that true? We have the wiring inside the water tower currently.
I can answer the question, but I'd rather have her intermediary answer the question. If you can just please answer the
I'm pretty
question.
sure I heard somewhere along the line that you were going to remove the wiring that's inside our Point Pleasant Beach water tower.
Yes, that's correct. So once the equipment is installed onto the new tower, they're going to cut over, so to speak, that's an industry term, where they wire up the existing, or the newly relocated equipment and power on that site. So once the new monopole site is powered on, they decommission the old site on the water tower. So they remove the existing antennas, the existing radio heads, any ancillary equipment that's on the exterior of the tower, as well as the cabling on the interior of the tower. So any contacts, wiring, or power or fiber lines, that will all be removed from the water tower.
The water tower is gonna remain there.
Sir,
I'm
we
sorry.
need to have your name.
My name is Robert Ellsworth, 414 Philadelphia. That's my buddy.
Thank you.
I understand that the water tower is gonna stay, and with it is gonna stay the brackets that have been holding up the antennas, or do we plan to remove them and repair the damage that's been done to the welding, or rather to the water tower from the welding?
Certainly. So there are a couple different facets to that. All these antennas, they're installed onto the water tank using supporting steel, steel pipes or angle bracketry. So there are a few different antenna mount types at the top of the tower. So in order to properly paint and maintain the water tower, they need to sandblast the existing water tower to take off all the old paint, all the old rust, and with it, potentially potentially the carrier antenna mounts, depending on how they're attached. So all the pipes, all the angle steel members that you see kicking back, bracing the pipes, that will be removed.
So it'll all be smoothed out, and it should be back to almost its original state.
Certainly. Now, depending on the tiny little brackets on the water tank surface, depending on if they're fully welded to the water tank surface or if they use stud weld connections, the stud weld connections are going to sandblast right off.
Okay.
The fully welded bracketry will be more difficult to remove. They may ultimately decide to leave them in place. However, those brackets will be roughly 3-inch by 3-inch angles. So if they determine they can't be removed, they will paint them to match the exterior of the water tank, and the weld will be secure enough to where there will be no further degradation of the tank surface.
So what I'm concerned about is these similar metal causing corrosion. We have a problem here in Point Pleasant Beach because it's so close to the ocean. Salt water, is a corrosive part of our lives. And my concern is down the road, having to patch this further. I think leaving them in place is gonna be an issue. Of course, it has to be plugged somehow. So I have to bend to your experience and hope that you do things with your craftsmanship in mind.
Certainly.
Yeah, thank you.
Can I ask another question? Mary Melzer.
Oh, I'm good, we're just getting started.
I know you are, I know. I can get my question.
Okay.
What color is the pole going to be? Is it going to be silver? Is it going to be brown, the monopole?
So the
Is it going
monopole.
to match the color of the water tower?
So it won't, the water tower is painted in these images, so the monopole is not proposed to be painted at this time. The monopole is going to use like a galvanized steel finish, and the benefit of the galvanized steel is that it prevents rusting from occurring. So I think that will be good for the pole in that it's so close to the shore here. And the galvanized steel finish, it's similar to a lot of steel you'll see, say I guess like if you're on the highway and you see I forget what the technical terms of them are called, but the like the little roadside metal
Guardrails.
or guardrails.
Nice.
Thanks, We're all friends here, really.
Similar to like a guardrail finish.
With the
Nothing
truss
too
supports
far
for
from it.
signage.
You see, it's kind of like a silvery metallic finish, but the intent of that is to prevent rusting from occurring.
But could it be painted? Couldn't it, wouldn't that add another layer of protection to the galvanized metal? Galvanized metal can be painted. And-
Galvanized metal
and
can
I
be
think it would blend
painted.
in more. I mean, we went through the thing about the trees and that was knocked down. But we really wanna have it as least obtrusive as possible. Think Bayhead and their water tower. We don't want water, obviously, we're not gonna have wires on the outside, but we also like to have it blend in as much as possible with the existing water tower and sub-towers, I get the tanks.
Problem I see is, as I would see it, galvanized steel is galvanized steel. It's gonna kind of look the same for a very long time.
Silver
You-
versus blue is what.
You
I'm
paint something,
getting at.
you paint the monopole, and it's gonna have to be repainted periodically. I don't know how often, but it's eventually gonna, even the best of paints, I think, will succumb to the elements, and you're into a maintenance issue of it not looking so good till it gets repainted someday. That's just my opinion on putting paint on it.
Okay, I have a couple more questions, if you don't mind.
I don't mind at all.
I'd like to read this, because I don't want to miss anything. My comments this evening were not intended to oppose better wireless, better connection. Rather, I hope to encourage a solution that serves Verizon's needs as well as protecting our own interests in the borough and its residents for decades to come. I have several questions, and the first question I have would be the clarification on financial arrangements. The wireless companies would be paying rent for the equipment, locations, and for the tower, I assume. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. That was a small question. Secondly, I'm concerned about the long-term maintenance of the monopole. The owner is required to maintain and repaint the structure on a regular basis. Is that what I'm understanding? That you're going to keep the monopole up to snuff, and would there be periodic inspections to ensure that the monopole remains structurally sound? And who would make these inspections? And how often would they occur? And would the results be available to the borough? I believe that the agreement should require that the structure maintain a neutral appearance over its entire lifetime. Thirdly, I would like to, the agreement to clearly state that when the tower is no longer needed or becomes obsolete, which we know is gonna happen within another 10 years or so, the satellites, when they're all in position, are gonna do away with all cell towers, probably. It all depends on costs and what we really can't project now, but the handwriting is on the wall. Taxpayers should not be responsible for the future cost of dismantling an abandoned structure, so that should be kept in your minds. I also request that the contract language prohibiting any external wiring, conduit, which we've already covered. Also, the ground wire, that's going to be put inside the monopole, so that's not going to run on the outside?
Yes, that's correct.
I believe that these subjects deserve further explanation before a final decision is made. But I do have one other question here that I wanted to ask. You covered the A3 or the A7 thing. The concrete. We're talking about October. We're getting very close to the winter time and the first freeze. How do you handle pouring concrete in the winter time?
So, the geotechnical report provides guidance on the pour itself. It's not unusual, just from previous new build sites, it's not unusual for foundation pours to occur in the fall. There are code specified recommendations to help ensure the pour is done per the specifications. So ultimately, the general contractor will review those recommendations and decide when and whether to implement them at any point during the pour. Should there be some concern, whether it be weather or ground conditions or otherwise.
Okay. And you are aware that the ground table level, the water level is,
What table side?
it's 7 feet at that point? we mentioned hurricanes before. We have to be concerned that the water tower, the monopole is of a level that's protected for at least, I would say, 4 feet, 6 feet, 8 feet. How tall would that stand actually be?
So during the geotechnical analysis, what they do is they drill down to a certain depth below grade at the proposed tower location to get characteristics of the soil, determine what sort of structure the soil can support. And the geotechnical report found groundwater at approximately 6 feet below grade. So the saturated soil 6 foot and under was taken into consideration for the foundation design. I believe the foundation for this particular pole is about 7'6" in diameter and extends about 27 feet below grade.
And what about above grade?
Above grade, I don't recall, it's typically around 6 inches to a foot.
Okay, the reason why I state that is if we had Sandy come through and we had more than 6 inches on the ground, we had boats that were floating in Broadway. Yeah, we had more boats on land than we did in the water after Sandy came through. We have lost 3 of our 4 transformers in our substation because the water came up, and our substation is at the same north and right here. So, and we're parallel with where proposed monopole is going to be. So my concern is that if the water gets too high, is it going to knock that monopole down? I realize that it's circular and the water should be able to get around it, but is it going to take that kind of a beating?
Right, so the geotechnical report found groundwater at 6 foot, and everything below that. So the vast majority of the soil is already fully saturated with water.
Understood.
So when they were designing the monopole, the foundation itself, the way it resists lateral forces like wind, it's dissipated along that full length of the reinforced concrete foundation. So all 27 feet in length of that foundation is resisting those lateral forces. So the concrete foundation really, it gets its strength to resist those forces along that full length. It's not just, say, like the top 6 feet, it's that entire 27-foot length. So it's the groundwater has been considered for the design. And as for electrical concerns, we aren't proposing any additions or changes to the electrical at this site other than running any required power lines underground using that new underground roadway for the conduit.
Actually, one last question. The sway during a hurricane, that monopole will sway, and there's enough of a give to it that obviously it's not going to be steadfast.
Yeah.
But is that taken into consideration as well?
That is taken into consideration. So anytime you run into a tower such as this, or you actually run into it with some large skyscrapers as well. But telecommunications facilities such as this tower, they're going to have a little sway when they're hit with the max design wind speed. And again, in this case, it's 121 mile-an-hour wind speed. So there will be some sway, and that is calculated every time the tower is analyzed for, like I think some of your number 2, I can touch on that, your question number 2.
Great.
The tower's analyzed every time there's an equipment upgrade on here, or say, you've got 2 carriers on there, the 3rd one gets added, or the municipal equipment gets added, the EMS equipment. It'll get analyzed every time, along with the mounting steel up top that supports that said carrier's equipment. So the structural analysis will be constantly updated with the latest equipment layout every time something changes on the tower related to the equipment.
Very good. Thank you so much.
Cool.
Any other comments? All right, well, close the public section, seeing none.
Can I actually ask a few questions? My name is Lisa Montalbano. I'd like to know what other small towns like ours, like Point Pleasant Beach, have this type of size monopole built? Have you ever had them built in any other small towns? Like this size, of this monstrosity in a small town like this?
I can certainly answer that Verizon Wireless, along the Barrier Island has multiple monopoles.
Of this size?
There are, I don't know the exact sizes, I know there are monopoles, near Euston. I know there are monopoles in Chadwick Beach, which is part of Tom's River. There are monopoles at, Ocean Beach 3, there are monopoles.
Now, are they close to homes?
Chadwick Beach is feet from homes. It's on the bay side, Chadwick Beach. If you're familiar with Chadwick, Silver, Normandy, those particular areas, it's a number of feet. The same thing with the, Euston is in the middle of Route 35, so you have the separation of 35 north and south. There are other monopoles further south as well, but yes, certainly it's not unusual on the Barrier Island to be close to residents.
And who is currently paying for the painting of the water tower? Is Verizon paying for that, or is the town paying for that?
No,
The water
the-
tower has not been upkept at all.
So the town has been in the process of, I think they received IBANK funding to paint the tank, it's probably 4 years ago.
They
So,
provided
so,
funding from who?
so, IBANK is a funding agency, gets its funds from the federal government, funded down through the state of New Jersey that provides advantageous, lending for their projects. So when you fund through IBANK, you can get a zero interest loans, which obviously then makes the cost much more conducive rather than paying whatever the municipality. So they bundle all the projects and go out for bonding rather than a municipality going out for bonding separately. So the reason that the water tower hasn't been upgraded or hasn't been painted right now is because there's antennas on top of the water tower. So the whole purpose of this process is to get those off the water tower so it can be painted.
But if-
The contract has been let, the smaller towers have, the tanks have been painted, and it's really a matter of once they're off, then the tower itself will be painted. Last time it was painted was 2007, I think.
But what I'm asking is why weren't the cell phone tower, the cell phone people required to maintain their products on the water tower? It seems as though the antennas that are on the water tower is what makes the water tower look so poorly and it's like ruined our water tower. So how are you gonna hold them accountable for that?
I don't know if I agree with that statement. There's antennas on the water tower. The water tower itself hasn't been painted in 20 years. It's due to be painted, regardless of the fact whether it has antennas on it or not. It's actually due to be painted.
Okay, and when we saw that the water tower was gonna be in the way of this monopole, why didn't we start looking for other areas so we weren't going to be so close to homes? You're building this in a residential area where you're putting it in 100 feet of people's bedroom windows. So why didn't the town start looking for other areas? If we can't take down the water tower,
I just want to clarify that our purpose is here tonight, the planning board is not a party to this contract. The governing body, the town council, the borough council entered into the contract. The planning board has to review the project to determine whether it's in conformity or if they have any recommendations as it relates to the master plan. So the board would not be able to answer that, nor would it be appropriate for them to answer those questions. So I would say I would limit, if you have questions from the applicant regarding the actual proposal specifics, but our purposes here are limited, so.
I just think the board should really give this a lot more consideration, because you are putting this, it's in my backyard, literally in my backyard. I can show you a picture of my yard, which it's right next door. It's right in her backyard, and it's right in her backyard. So take that into consideration. This is a small town. did not buy into Newark or Elizabeth or wherever else. And you are changing our skyline, you're changing the view of the town, you're changing our views, you're changing our lifestyle, and it's really gonna affect everyone in the town. That looks like a monstrosity, honestly, so I
I'll say
think
this
that
much,
we're-
it's not the decision of the board to do that. And I'll also say,
Who
my,
says that?
my understanding is that the town did look at alternate locations, other municipal properties.
Well, we don't have to, this does, we can still look. I mean, you really have to, as of the planning board, I mean, we're leaving this all in your hands. So,
But it's
Just,
not.
It's not. It's-
just,
it really
I just
is
want to
not.
clarify further,
well, who is?
respectfully, this was a decision of the governing body, the mayor and council, to enter into this project and this contract. The planning board has no ability to deny the project here tonight, or approve the project, or really, the only thing that they could do is they could conduct a hearing, and if they have any recommendations as to whether this is in conformity with the master plan, they could provide those recommendations. They could simply end the hearing and say, we don't have any recommendations, but they have no ability to approve or deny. And also, even if the board does provide any recommendations to the governing body is not obligated to abide by it's the governing body's decision. The borough council.
Okay, so mayor and council, so, okay, so we have to bring this again in front of the mayor and council, because we did this already a few years ago, and it was declined, and it was taken off the table. The mayor said it wasn't coming to town, we weren't gonna build a monopole, yada, 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 totally taken, it's in the minutes somewhere, it was totally taken off the table. They agreed that it didn't have any business in our small town, and then all of a sudden, it's back up again. So,
Yeah, I would just say, as far as, it's not back up again here. The board has a limited jurisdiction here just to provide an informal review and recommendation. So that's really what we're here. I just don't want there to be any confusion as to whether the board can deny or stop or prevent this from proceeding.
Marion Ellsworth again. I would just ask that the board recommend that the applicant be responsible for taking down that monopole and all the equipment if and when it is no longer needed. The other thing I would like to, and I don't know if this is in your purview to recommend, since I pointed out that those dimensions are a little off, and the monopine will not hide the Point Pleasant Beach on the water tower, which we were told the monopine was off the table because it was gonna hide the words Point Pleasant Beach. That the governing body go back to the table and rethink having a monopine.
Have you seen those fake tree?
I
I
saw
mean,
the one today. I saw the one today.
They're so out of context and so out of character, and
It
it's
doesn't-
like
I
somebody
comment on
stuck
that?
an ugly fake redwood in the middle of, I mean, if they looked halfway decent, but they're just,
Just accept that I have to look at it from my picture window. I moved here 54 years ago, there was only that water tower there when I moved here. And I realized that you needed the tanks on the ground because we needed more water, we had saltwater intrusion, and things have changed over the years, that's fine. And I went with the changes. I did go with the changes. But, you know, now I look at I don't even have to look at my picture window. I sit at my dining room table, I can see a dog pen over here. I can see a water pipe coming out that goes nowhere. I don't know what they're gonna do with that water pipe, it goes nowhere. There used to be a building where the water pipe was, they took the building down and now there's a water pipe. I know you have no jurisdiction over this, this is why we would like to see a tree there, it just looks a little better to us, it's our personal opinion.
I love trees. I serve on the Shade Tree Commission. I planted a lot of trees in town. It's not gonna look like a tree.
It doesn't look like a tree, but it's,
I just want to comment real quick that the decision wasn't because it's going to cover the Point Pleasant Beach. It was because the tree is going to look out of place and would draw a line of sight to the tree as opposed to just a regular monopole.
okay.
Thank you.
Can I also say that, do you need me to say my name again, miss? Please. Lisa Montalano, 410 New York Avenue. I think you should take the consideration of the residents who have to live around this. I don't know where you live, Mr. James, but we live within 100 I think you should take into consideration how we feel about what we have to look at. You're saying you would rather see a monopole, you're saying you would rather see a monopole. What about the people who have to live by it? And we're all in our middle age. We're not running around, we're at home, we're in our homes, we're staying there, we're raising our grandchildren. We don't wanna see a monopole.
I'm just simply expressing my opinion. I've seen monopoles and I've seen the fake trees. The fake trees stick out a lot more. I think the monopole is a lot less intrusive. Yeah, it's not gonna blend into the landscape. There's nothing beautiful about any of these options,
nothing.
but
But as being part of the tree committee, if you planted other trees around these, have you seen these monopoles amongst other big, large trees, which we used to have in the water tower, but with the last storm, they came down, they look fine. When other trees are planted amongst these trees, or whatever the heck they're called, they look fine, they do not stand out. And
I've seen them where they've been planted in more of a wooded setting, surrounded by trees, but still towering above the trees, and I thought they still looked out of place. I mean, the way the township owns that property, I don't know if there's any option to add trees, use trees for screening.
There was trees in there, they came down in the last storm.
Yeah, I
I
don't know.
have pictures of them if you want to ever see them,
No, it's,
and it looks a lot better. If there was trees planted around that, it could camouflage it a bit.
All right, so is there any other,
Just for the public record,
Okay.
I did get to look through the lease agreement, and there is a section removal at end of term, so there is a 5-year lease term, there's additional terms that can continue, but on the expiration of any of the terms, then the property is to be restored to its current condition, so that would lead to the removal
of
the
it
pole
and the equipment? Yeah.
and the equipment.
In 5 years?
No, so the first lease agreement is for 5 years. It is renewable for 4 additional 5-year terms, I think is currently written, with an accelerator as to lease payments and so forth.
So what does that mean to us? Like, so in 4 or 5 years, we can decide whether we want?
No, Mr. Ellsworth asked if everything goes into satellites, what happens to the pole?
Right.
And the indication is when the carriers no longer desire to use the pole, they will have to remove it.
All right, at this time, we'll close the public comment session. Any additional comments from anyone on the board?
I don't have any.
No.
So we just need it.
Yeah, if there's no recommendations, we
I
could
don't think
advise.
we
to-
have any
Yep.
recommendations at this time. So I guess I'd entertain a motion for adjournment.
I'll make that.
I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank
Will
you all
the
for
board
coming.
be- I'm sorry, will the board be maintaining the marked exhibits, or shall I take them with me?
I did take them off. Unless you wanna take photos when you go back to the office, email them to me, that would be great.
I'll happily do it however you prefer.
Yeah, take them with you, shoot me some emails, that would be great.
Okay.
Send them.
You don't wanna carry that thing around?
No, I actually done most of the exhibits for 50 years out of the building.
So I need to pull the marked exhibits, please, for your package.